admit this, but when I was a child, my friends and I occasionally played a game that we called ditch. If one of our group fell out of favor with the rest, we conspired to ditch them or to run away from them when a set signal was given. And this was especially useful if you had a little brother or two that loved to tag along with you and your friends. You'd yell, "Ditch!" and everyone would scatter, and the poor ditchy would just be left standing there. That was all well and good until, that game was kind of turned on me or turned on one of my friends. And even at a young age, I knew in my heart of hearts that this game was wrong. It was cruel. I'd like to think that as I've gotten older, I no longer ditch anyone. But if we examine our lives carefully, we would probably discover that we do ditch, or at least ignore, some people some of the time. Perhaps we do this in school, which for some starts tomorrow, or for the rest next week, ditching a classmate because they're not like us. Perhaps we do this at work, when a subordinate or a boss goes against our grain. Perhaps we do this as a society, or even a church, when a person or group differs from us because of race, their financial status, their political affiliation, or their sexual preference. The woman in today's gospel would be the perfect focus for Jesus in a game of ditch. After all, she was not a Jew. She was a Canaanite, a hated foreigner. She was a woman. She was alone. And she seemed to be bothersome. Did you hear the comment from the apostles, the disciples? They said, "Get rid of her." The crowd that Matthew's gospel addressed, which is Jewish Christians, would have supported Jesus if he played a game of ditch. After all, the Jews felt that since they were the chosen race, everyone else was somehow less than. Jesus played the game a little bit. He sparred with the woman. He told her that his ministry was for the chosen ones, the Jews first. He came across a little bit condescending. Did you hear that one comment? He actually calls her, it says a dog in the scriptures, but the comment is really a puppy. He called her a puppy. But the woman's steadfast. She spars back with Jesus. She begs him to heal her daughter. And what one mother would not beg for healing for a sick child? And she's shrewd enough to answer Jesus back. Even the puppies eat the scraps that fall from the table of the master. Jesus is surprised and pleased and speaks to her as what? A sister and a friend. He comments on her great faith and he heals her daughter. The first reading that we heard proclaimed from the prophet Isaiah is a similar story. These poor people, the Jews, have been exiled, run out of their own country by foreigners. They ended up in lands that we know today as Iraq and Iran, and finally made it back home to Jerusalem, to the temple, finding when they got there that the place was overrun with foreigners. When they returned, and I'm sure feeling the sense of what happened because we are the chosen people, Isaiah instructs them, welcome these people, welcome these foreigners, as long as they keep God's command. The first lesson in these readings is clear, and it has us look at the foreigners among us and our attitude toward them. I think of those that I mentioned before, those who don't fit into my group, those who are different because of race, religion, economic level, or sexual orientation than me, those who speak a different language than me, those who are immigrants, who seek a better way of life than they have in their native land. And speaking of immigrants, I think we've forgotten something that has affected at least my own family. And my great-grandparents and their parents were all immigrants. some of whom came to this country illegally. One running away from the law in England or Ireland. When he was asked if he was English, he said he was Irish. When he was asked if he was Irish, he said he was English. All to seek a better way of life for their family, and eventually for me. Jesus challenges us with the story of the woman. The prophet Isaiah does the same. Is our attitude towards others the attitude of God? While different, are we tolerant, respectful, and loving of others? Perhaps like you, I have a lot of work to do in this area. Second, who doesn't appreciate the woman's tenacity and her persistence with Jesus? All too often, I don't know about you, but when I offer my prayers, I don't get my way with God. Either he doesn't answer or I get the opposite answer. And what happens with some of us when that experience, we encounter that? We sulk. Some of us quit. We leave the church. We stop praying. We join a new religion. We engage in bad behavior like a child throwing a temper tantrum. The woman reminds us, remain steadfast in your faith. Stick with it. Spar with God. Argue with God. Be persistent with God. After all, isn't that what we do with our spouses, our friends, our children, and our loved ones? Many times we don't back down. We stand up for what we feel is right, just, loving, and compassionate. We remain persistent. May God continue to give us the bold grace to do just that. And finally, I would ask that each day this week, you and I reflect on just the last statement of the woman. Even the dogs or puppies eat the scraps that fall from the table of their masters. While it may seem a little crass, I think that reality holds true. Just the little scraps we get from God are enough, abundantly enough. May we take the time to see and appreciate the glorious, abundant blessings that God provides, even when they seem like scraps. They are, after all, more and better than we could ever come up with on our own.